So, go like
Too
this.
much of a deep.
Yeah.
No, you weren't.
No, no.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it is 4 o'clock and Stacy, if you are ready. I am ready. We can begin the meeting. Welcome, everybody. It's been a while, so it's nice to see everybody again. And Larry, hope you're feeling well. You know, you're recovering from COVID, so.
I'm on the mend, thank you.
Oh, good. Well, it's nice that you came. We appreciate that. Okay, so we will. Holly roll, thank you.
Alright. Board Member Walker,
Here.
Board Member Tiffany,
Here.
Board Member McWilliams.
Here.
Board Member Johnson.
Here.
Board Member Fuentes. Board Member Duff.
Here.
Board Member Dement. Board Member Darby.
Here.
Board Member Blackman.
Here.
Vice Chair Dillard.
Here.
Chair Castanos.
All right, thank you. And Danny Walkup has agreed to lead us in the pledge today, so. the flag is back here.
Moved it.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, thank you, Danny. Okay, you've got a copy of the agenda in front of you. Are there any additions or deletions to the agenda at this time? Any public comments? Through Jason?
None at this time.
Okay, thank you. Are there any conflict disclosures that anybody on the board would like to bring forward? Hearing none, we'll get right into current business. Item number 5.1. The approval of the minutes for the Community Police Oversight Board on July 20th. I think there are a few questions, so maybe we should take these one at a time. Dale has his hand raised. Oh, Dale?
Thanks,
Yeah.
Chair. I just wanted to, apparently Caroline is in the meeting as an attendee. I just wanted to point out she could be bumped up to a panelist if someone could do that. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Yeah, we, a lot of times we will approve all three, or, you know, if there's two sets of minutes, we'll approve them at the same time. However, there might be a question. I don't know, Leroy, if there actually was a question with one of the points you made in the August 17th. I'll bring it up and then you can tell me what you think.
Okay.
So July 20th, minutes, any changes, questions, comments? Hearing none, do I have a motion to approve July 20th?
So moved.
Bob Duff, second.
Second.
Larry, was that you? Yes.
Aye.
Okay, Larry seconded.
Is that for single or one?
One for just July 20th. So Stacy, thank you.
Board Member Walker, how do you vote?
Yes.
Board Member Tiffany, how do you vote?
Abstain since I wasn't there.
Board Member McWilliams, how do you vote?
Aye.
Board Member Johnson, how do you vote?
Aye.
Board Member Fuentes, how do you vote? I'm sorry, she's not here. Board Member Duff, how do you vote?
Yes.
Board Member Dement, how do you vote?
Yes.
Board Member Darby, how do you vote?
Yes.
Board Member Blackman, how do you vote?
Yes.
Vice Chair Dillard, how do you vote?
Yes.
Chair Castanos, how do you vote?
Yes.
Motion carries with all board members voting yes and Board Member Tiffany abstaining.
On the August 17th board minutes, there is just one question that I had, and Leroy, it comes on item number 6 of those minutes where it talks about
Committee report.
yeah, the committee report, and you reported out on if you look at the 5th bullet down on that page 4 of the minutes. And I'm not really sure
Concerns with the non-disclosure agreement.
how it affects an officer's.
Yeah, so that was one of the questions that the POA had for our IPA's possible mediator for us, and so we had asked that, and we had that question answered to the satisfaction of the POA. So they were a little bit concerned about a non-disclosure agreement, but there was no issue there.
And
So that
so,
was something
and so
that
does
came up
that
in-
sentence with an officer's, I'm just not sure what that
Mhm.
sentence is trying to say, with an officer's with or
Withdrawn
withdrawn?
mediation complaint. It's a little bit
Is that,
clunky.
is that, what is that saying? I guess I'm just not.
I guess it was concerning whether or not, you know, if somebody withdrew from the whole mediation process, what would happen next? And that was
Okay, and
explained
that's,
satisfactory to them. So.
okay, so whether they stay with it or they withdraw from it, that's what that means, okay. I just wasn't sure of that terminology.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Mr. Larson has a question.
Okay.
No,
No,
that was an accidental hand raise. I apologize.
okay. And since there are no changes to the minutes for the August 17th meeting, we might go ahead and ask if there's anything for the September 21st meeting. Any changes or questions or corrections? And if that is the case, somebody may be able or willing to move to approve both the August 17th and the September 21st meeting minutes.
Move the adoption of the August 17th and September 21st minutes.
Okay,
I'll second
Larry
that.
has the first, and Bob, you're second.
Yes.
Bob Duff. Thank you.
Board Member Walker, how do you vote?
Yes.
Board Member Tiffany, how do you vote?
Yes.
Board Member McWilliams, how do you vote?
I would abstain as I was not present for the September meeting.
Okay. Board Member Jackson, how do you vote?
Yes.
Board Member Dove, how do you vote?
I thought you said Duff.
Johnson. Then Duff.
Okay.
Oh,
Period, days are working.
Okay. Board Member Dement, how do you vote?
Yes.
Board Member Darby, how do you vote?
Yes.
Board Member Blackman, how do you vote?
Yes.
Vice Chair Dillard, how do you vote?
Yes.
Chair Castanos, how do you vote?
yes,
Motion carries with all members voting yes and Board Member McWilliams abstaining.
great. Thank you, Stacy. The next item on the agenda, 5.2, is the La Mesa Police Department update, and I'll turn that over to Chief Sweeney.
Thanks, Chair. It's good to see everybody here tonight. Just a couple things. It's been a while since we met, so I wanted to go over just a few things. Oktoberfest that we had this year was a first for La Mesa PD and the city of La Mesa, and I want to tell you about a little bit about why that is. It's the first time we've had 0 arrests
Wow.
and 0 crime for the Oktoberfest. Very first time, at least in my, recollection of the years that I've been here. So we're extremely proud of that. I think that a lot of it is attributed to, the way that it's organized, 1, 2, the police presence that was out there to make people feel comfortable and those that wanted to victimize our citizens to feel uncomfortable. And then, ultimately people behaving. So we did have one person almost talk himself into jail and a friend stepped up. So we're very happy for that. So I did want to share that success with you. On October 26th, we did a presentation to the Community Relations and Veterans Commission of our home program. So that was a great presentation. Matthew Smiley came out and spoke to it. Captain Nicholas was there. I was there. Other board members were there. I appreciate you being there. So just anytime we get a chance to put information about our home program, what it's all about and how successful it's been, we do that. So that was a great opportunity for us. As far as our staffing, I'll give you that good or bad news, depending on how you look at it. We are right now, we're down 5 police officers that we're still trying to fill those holes. We had We have 3 police officers in our academies right now. We have 1 in the senior academy. He will graduate Friday. That's Colton Calvert. We actually hired his brother first, and now we have him, so he'll graduate on Friday. We have 2 others that are in the junior academy. We did have 3. Unfortunately, 1 did not make it through. However, we did find a fix because we hired him as a community service officer part-time. And he's currently in the mix to apply for their full-time community service officer position that's open. So even though it didn't work out right now in the police academy, we did want to retain that individual. So he'll be here with us. So we're really excited about that we had a position for him. We have 2 dispatcher positions that we had open that were vacant. I have good news. One of our dispatchers that left for another agency came back as of this morning. So she was only gone for less than 45 days, I think it was. And then realized the grass was not greener and this is a great place to work. So we're very excited to be able to bring her back. So that helps out our communication staff. We have 5 police officers in training right now. So you take a look at those numbers, 5 police officers in training, we have 5 vacancies, we have 3 in the academy. That's 13. That's a lot. We're still at 20% female staffing. That's increasing. That's the highest we've ever been in La Mesa. So we're very proud of that. We are going to have to expand the female locker room. So that will be, I'm joking, but not joking. That's something very serious we're going to have to do. Take a look at. We completed our sergeant's assessment center. So right now I have 3 sergeant's positions open. And potentially 4. We have a lieutenant's position open right now too. So Vice Chair Dillard came out and helped us with the sergeant selection panel. Thank you for that. I'm going through the interviews right now. So we have 8 applicants for those 3 positions. We've got a great group of men and women in that selection. So I'm hoping that I will make a decision. Well, I try not to promise, but I will make a decision before shift change is what I've told my staff, and that is in January. Hopefully sooner. But a lot of good things happening. We have our Citizens Academy, which is currently ongoing. It'll graduate tonight, actually in this room at 6 p.m. So we're really excited to have a conclusion to that. I believe, Matt, was there 18 or 19, I think.
I don't know the total number.
Yeah, 18 or 19 that we had attending that academy. The good thing is they all went on ride-alongs. They all got to see how, La Mesa Police Department works internally and externally. So that was really good. We also had, I did another home presentation last night with Matthew Smiley at the, I can't remember the name of the meeting now. Anyways, like I said, any chance we can get out there to show that program and do ride-alongs. As a matter of fact, board member Blackman went on a ride-along with our home program with Matthew Smiley. So that is a great opportunity that's still available to any of you that would like to do that. I think it's really eye-opening. I would defer to board member Blackman to kind of fill in the blanks on that. But we also, we have a Helix High School intern that's going to be starting with us here very soon. So we're excited about that, to bring in a 16-year-old intern here to learn the inner workings of our police department and help us out. So that's just exciting news that I wanted to share with you. And then Chair Castaños and I went to Helix High School once again and spoke about the school to prison pipeline with the class there. So it was a really good turnout, great questions by the kids. Just a great opportunity to interact with our high school. And that's all I have.
I just have a couple. I have a statement and then a question. So I'll do the question first. I just want to be clear on the staffing. You said the staffing, you need 5 police officers, but then so at what point do you call them a police officer? After they come out of all the training, then you say it's a police officer? So you basically have, did I count that right? That you have 4 that are going through the process?
No, we have 3 in the police academy.
Okay,
So we did have 4, but I
Okay.
had that 1 officer recruit came out as a new community service officer,
okay, so is he now counted as
not a police officer,
not a police officer? Okay, so,
community service officer.
Okay, so then, so the 5 is including the 3 people that are left in the academy?
They're all separate. So if you look at it this way, we have 3 people in the academy, so those 3 are separate. Those are police officer recruits.
Okay,
We have 5 vacancies that have nobody in it right now.
okay,
So those are, until we find somebody to sit in those spots and pass backgrounds, then we'll fill those. And then we have 5 that are in training. Those are police officer trainees. So you go from recruit to trainee when you're out in the field, to full-fledged police officer. So we have 5 vacancies. The other seats are filled, if that makes sense.
but potentially those people that are either in the academy or training could be filled by those empty seats? No.
Those are in addition to those that are already here.
Oh, okay. All right, well, I guess it wasn't as stupid of a question as I thought it might be,
No, great
but
question.
that's a little complicated.
Yeah.
And then I wanted to, just comment on the meeting that I saw at the enrichment, is that the retirement enrichment, center? I don't remember what you call it.
Adult Enrichment Center.
Adult, okay, sorry, not retired. Adult Enrichment Center. Matthew Smiley was very impressive, and I would like to see more of him and telling the community, because the numbers that he broke out that night, just so the board members know, it's really important for us to know the great work that's coming out of the home program. And those stats were very impressive. And I've heard the story, you could do anything with statistics, but a successful story is a successful story. So you can stats that all you want. But I think that we should, and I mentioned this to Matt, that he should always have the ability to share, anyone who wants to share their story. Because he talked about, going from the beginning to the end on, meeting people where they're at, their issue, and then helping them get all the way to where they're self-supporting. And I think that that's where our community wants homelessness issues to go. And obviously we can't save everybody because of different issues why a person won't take those services. But I think that you guys are on the right track. I think you're doing an amazing job, and I see it as an incubator for other cities. It's really good numbers, and you guys should be commended for that program. It's awesome.
Well, we're very proud of it. And, it really took a village to start.
Of course.
It was in cooperation with the city helping us out, the police department, just everybody that had a piece in that puzzle, human resources, getting the hiring done, finance paying. I mean, it really took the entire city and the support of the community to get it up and running. And I give props where props are due. And Captain Nicholas did an amazing job at getting this program off the ground. and
Captain
running.
Nicholas.
Yeah.
Yes.
And I would love to have Matthew speak at all these events, but I really need him to work.
I understand. I understand. It just means we need more staff, so
We
we
do.
need more money.
Michaela Blackman, did you have anything to add since you got to do a ride along with Matt Smiley? I didn't know if you were.
You're on mute.
Yeah, thank you so much. Sorry I couldn't be there tonight. I have a sinus infection, so there's a lot of sneezing going on. But yeah, I did a ride along last week, and I think one of the most prominent things that kind of stuck out to me was the fact that Matthew and his counterpart knew each homeless person that we encountered. They knew their names. There's like a relationship there. There's great rapport between him and the individuals that he assists. And that just really conveyed to me that he really cares about the individuals that he's trying to assist. So that was like a major thing for me. Because a lot of times, we see these homeless individuals and there's a lot of talk about, what we're trying to do for homelessness and how we're trying to address that, but there really isn't concrete proof. But doing that ride along, I was able to see just how impactful that program is. I mean, handing out food and water, clothing, resources. There was actually one individual who needed shoes and we didn't have his size. And so Matthew said that they would put in a request with the local thrift store that donates these items for his specific size. I mean, this is a really unique program, and I think that Matthew is the perfect individual to have leading that program. I left feeling like I'm such a proud resident of La Mesa, because this is going to be life-changing for the individuals and also for the community. So I'm just really proud of the work that they're doing. Keep it up. Great job. I can't say enough about it. There are still some barriers, but I think that that is coming from the county level and not the city level. So those are greater issues. But as far as La Mesa, I mean, I've been telling my friends and my coworkers since I did that ride along that La Mesa is different. La Mesa is really in great hands. So keep up the great work.
Thank you.
Thank you, Michaela. And also, I just wanted to say, just tagging along about the home program, with the presentation that Matthew and the chief and Matt Nicholas gave at the Adult Enrichment Center, even though there were about 12 to 15 people there were 242 on Facebook Live. I mean, that's how many people that actually viewed the presentation. So it does get out there to the community, and I'm seeing more and more comments about the home program on Nextdoor, and when people gripe about something, they throw out that, well, have you contacted the home program? So word's getting out that this is something to do, to take your, place, instead of just griping about something, there's a place to turn. So it's great. Thank you. Any other questions for the chief? Thank you, Chief Sweeney. That was great. 5.3 on the agenda is the independent police auditor update. Rick, do you have anything that you'd like to update us on at this point?
Well, we're getting through current day audits. I would expect by the next time we meet, we will have 2 completed and 2 more in process. So we're getting through, we're caught up. So these are real-time audit complaints, and things seem to be going pretty well.
Great. Thank you, Rick.
Yep.
Any other questions for Rick before we move on to 5.4? And Stacy, I don't know if you will let me know, or do you want me to ask if there are any public comments regarding the next 2 items?
I'll let you know.
Okay, that'd be great. So 5.4 is a report from the independent police auditor, Rick Rasmussen, regarding the historical case reviews. And I don't know if Caroline or Dale wanted to give us a little talk before we start.
Thank you, Chair. Not really talk, just wanted to remind everyone, we've talked several times about confidentiality laws in California that pertain to these situations. So just a general reminder that there are state laws in place in California that protect the confidentiality of police officers. And the level of confidentiality varies from case to case, depending on a few factors of that case, including the nature of the alleged police wrongdoing. So we've redacted the historic reports that you're about to see today in a way that's appropriate to each of those reports, case by case basis. So we just ask that you all sort of respect the confidentiality determinations that have been made, simply by limiting your conversations today to the information found within these versions, within these reports. So don't expose through questions or comments any additional information not found in the reports, and that could include identities of police officers, identities of victims, identities of complainants, or incident locations or anything like that. So unless Caroline had anything to add, I think that's the end of my little presentation there.
All right, thank you. So Rick, we'll let you go ahead and walk us through the various audits that have been performed, historical audits, I should say.
Okay. I'm going to start on the report that has the blackout in the report itself. I'm assuming you all have copies? Yeah,
So you're gonna start with the last one. It's, yeah, okay, well, in our list, it was the one that came last, so
It's on page 52, starting on page 52.
52, yes. And January 19th, 2018 was the date. Is that
that's
correct?
it.
Okay,
As you can read, this incident involved a 17-year-old juvenile and a police officer, wherein the police officer was requested to assist. The police officer responded to the location, and after numerous attempts to get the juvenile to depart the premises, was forced to place her in handcuffs and was escorting her out. When something occurred between the two of them, the video does not have audio with it, as I'm sure you all know. So we couldn't really hear what transpired between the two of them verbally. We spoke to that, reminding all officers that it was important that they get thick skin, or, just have the ability to ignore harsh and inappropriate language. In this case, something transpired between the two. It's somewhat murky because we obviously didn't have access at the time to the real-time witnesses to the case. Eventually, the officer used a hip toss to take the young lady to the ground. And, the mandate, the rule is you should use the least amount of force to accomplish your task. And we felt that there were other options still on the table. Any questions about that?
so as you had a chance to look through this, what questions do you have regarding this?
I have a couple of questions. Rick, probably this was extremely painful and difficult to read. So I don't want to be emotional about it because I have 3 children, and the idea that a police officer did this on campus grounds, which is the way it's described here, is alarming, to say the least. So would you say that, because there's a section in here that talks about what's reasonable. And so my question is, number one, do you understand that it would be reasonable to find out? Because I'm assuming that the police officer, given that he was on a quote unquote campus, that he would be encountering a student, and that student was most likely underage. Would that be a logical consideration, or something that he or she might ask in his conversation? Or is that unreasonable to even consider during, obviously they had a prior conversation before he actually grabbed hold of her. So would that be reasonable to consider the age and that person is a child?
Well, I mean, it's fairly clearly spelled out in the policy manual that you take all these factors into consideration. By the same token, though, a 17-year-old can be assumed to pose a threat just the same as a 27-year-old can. So I'm not trying to have it both ways, because clearly we didn't find the conduct, we didn't think it met standards. I will say that having done this now for combined of almost 19 years, the actions, although tough to see as you spelled out, they don't really qualify as excessive force within the parlance of police oversight. I mean, obviously, any force that exceeds standards in any way, by definition, is excessive. This one would be more aptly called improper use of force. We felt there were other options available that were lower down the use of force chain or ladder, or however you want to call it, that would have been as effective and less physical. And that's, that's really what we want our officers to do. Now, it's important to remember that this occurred a while ago. I know that the department has made great strides in ensuring that this type of action doesn't occur again, like they do after every incident of this magnitude. But we're still hiring human beings. And on any given day, any one of us is capable, for a multitude of reasons, of making an error in judgment. So all I'll say is I think that that the underlying factors, I think the officer was placed in a tough situation by the request for assistance, and we believe that he had other avenues that he could have pursued. I hope I answered your question.
So with that said, because it also says in the report that the female was not proposing any threat. In other words, she wasn't threatening any harm, nor did she have possession of any harm, because there was the talk about the spray, but I guess that was confiscated before he actually took her down. I'm not really sure, because it doesn't look like she has anything on her to pose any kind of physical threat. So, again, it's really disturbing. So going forward, would there be and this would be, probably a conversation to have with the chief of police and whoever else had an opinion on this in the police force. But if we have police officers who are assigned to campuses, that perhaps, because I don't know if it's a rotational situation or if it's just anybody, I'm not really sure, whoever is available to come, or I don't know. But is there any kind of training that we could incorporate in regards to, child development and you know, consideration in regards to someone who's obviously having some kind of escalated issue, because it doesn't appear to me even that the officer tried to find out why she was upset, why he asked her to leave and she said no. But I didn't get the just that he was even trying to de-escalate the issue, but I think that if we could have something where there was some kind of training for it, and like I said, I don't know if it's just a couple of officers that are assigned to campuses, or if it's anybody that's available that gets called to a campus, but if that's something that we could consider to make sure that it doesn't happen, or if there's something else that's going on that maybe is included in training that I don't know about, or we don't know about.
Well, before I turn it over to the chief to talk about the specific training that SROs, school resource officers get, there are some assumptions that you're making that we couldn't make. Now, the officer in his statement paints a completely different picture in the reasonableness factor from his point of view. And we have nothing to refute that. So when you discuss reasonableness, that's in the eye of the beholder as under the objective of a reasonable officer's action on any given day. So I don't know for sure what transpired before, but I know that the officer asked repeatedly for the 17-year-old to depart the premises. I do believe that occurred. So yes, we need to be able to de-escalate. I know it's an emphasis item within our police department. I know the chief and his command staff, I've had long talks with Captain Nicholas about this very topic and the chief himself. So I do believe they are doing everything they can to de-escalate. But I can't opine on what transpired before because I have nothing to go off of.
So
Did you want to add to that?
Yeah, I'm happy to jump in and add to it if that's okay. Just a couple things. I mean, obviously, we do have school resource officers that are assigned to the schools. We have allocated 2 police officers that are school resource officers. However, at this time, there was only 1. And we currently have 1. Those school resource officers go through a training that's a post-approved peace officer standards and training for working in schools and doing that. I think we've come a long way since this incident. There's no doubt about it in my mind. And the reality is that anybody can respond to that school. A resource officer is exactly that. We want that officer to be there at the school for a resource for that school, period. We're not looking for them to go there and make arrests. We're not looking for them to go there and stir things up. That's not the intent of a school resource officer. It's the resource. This instance, I wasn't the chief during this instance, but I do know that there was de-escalation that was attempted in the beginning. Although, like I said, we've learned a lot since this. That's based on report. So when you ask somebody, hey, school doesn't want you to be, I'm just throwing words out. What can I do to make this better? Can I take you home? Can I give you a ride? What can we do to make this better? And when the answer becomes nothing, arrest me, then we have to push that de-escalation button a little better. And we've learned that over the years. So, moving forward, all of my police officers know, well, like Rick said, a 17-year-old can be just as dangerous as a 27-year-old, 48-year-old, depending on what situation they're in, what training they've had, all of that. That's just a reality. We've seen it at school shootings. Unfortunately, this is not the case here. I'm not saying that or insinuating that whatsoever, but the training that we've done to change our policies when it comes to use of force and the training that our officers have attended is all about de-escalation. And I've told you that, when I came in here, my officers know that they're guardians. You're guardians first. That's what you're supposed to do. This is a resource officer. You have a new resource officer in that position now. He's doing a great job. Everybody understands and has learned from where we were at to where we are now that you know, kids can be kids. And trying to de-escalate that can sometimes be difficult. As a parent myself, I know that, I'm sure those in this room do too. But we have to look at it differently. And like I said, this happened in 2018. We're in 2022. We've learned a lot. We've come a long way. We put things in place to where this should not happen.
Yeah, it is a very painful tape to watch. And so it's really hard to say. And I think that, you know, the time that's gone by and the correction is, you know, at least, you know, soothing to hear in hopes that that kind of thing won't happen again. So, I mean, I understand. I did hear the story about how they did ask her, can they take her home and stuff like that. But I think you're right. I don't think that they pressed trying to de-escalate her and try to find out, well, you know, why don't you want me to help you? You know, why don't you, is it because you don't want to go home? You know, there wasn't a, you know, extensive inquiry with her and say, well, what can we do to, you know, to calm you down, you know?
Right. And I think, you know, a number of factors were in play here to include the school. Excuse me, I said that, campus, right?
Yeah.
It's important that they
'Cause
have
I-
a role in this.
Yeah,
too.
because I understand that there was no other evidence of, you know, what led up to this. Really. And how could you be on a campus and there be no witnesses? I didn't really see that.
Not understanding that one.
Like from the time whatever it started that a police officer was called, people must have seen something. I mean, that's why the police were called. You know, so I didn't understand how it could just lead up to that and have no witnesses.
So Rick, do you want to address that?
Well, I'll address it the best that I can. We didn't do the initial investigation. If this were to happen tomorrow or something similar to this, we would be on the ground floor from day one. So what we had to rely upon was the independent investigation into this matter from 4 years ago. We're not able to ask IA Internal Affairs to do this interview or that interview or gather this evidence or that evidence, nor do I think we would really have to today, because I believe the Internal Affairs Office there in the city has gotten markedly better. But I only have access to what I have access to, and I didn't have access to anything other than what we put in the report. I will say on your assumption, being a well-seasoned substitute teacher these days, I know by the time they call a school resource officer, those individuals within the school administration have taken steps to mitigate whatever is going on between an unruly student, I'll use air quotes, well prior to summoning, you know, campus security. So I don't know what transpired. I have my own opinion, but that's all it is. I can't back it up with evidence because I don't have it.
So I think Patricia's recommendation is a good one, though. You have two recommendations at the end of your report, and she's suggesting that it might be good for officers to undergo some sort of child development training. I think it's important for officers to know that the brain develops over a period of time, and it's not till they're 25 really that they have the cognitive, intellectual, social, or emotional ability to really deal with things effectively as an adult. So, you know, adults use a different part of their brain than the young folks, and youth deal more with emotion. Adults try to be more rational. You know, we're all constantly improving, but it's important for officers, I think, if they're gonna deal with youth, to understand some part of the brain development aspect so that they're less likely to want to treat them like a 27-year-old, unless, you know, they're causing imminent danger and harm to people around. Then you got to do what you have to do. But in this case, clearly, she was handcuffed. So I don't know.
If I can just throw,
Yes.
there is training that occurs.
Okay.
It occurs in the police academy. It's post-certified training. So that, what you're talking about, dealing with minors, we have policies on dealing with minors now that we've changed and gone through that state exactly what you're talking about.
So I noticed you have autism training.
We did.
And do you get updated child development training or something that, you know, can help?
Police typically do not get updated child development training. We get, it's as far as how to deal with minors and why maybe some of the things you're saying occur, that happens. But as far as like a specific, like autism was specific to autism, there's not that I'm aware of, other than post, there's no specific child development training. Now, we talk about in our use of force training, our defensive tactics training, all these things, you know, defensive tactics is not only weapons and hands and doing things, it's this and this. And that's kind of been our push moving forward, is getting our police officers to understand that it takes way more of this and this than it does anything else we have. And that's truly with whoever you're dealing with. But when you talk about juveniles, there's a difference. You know, kids can go from 0 to 100 in seconds. And there's a lot of factors to that. So they do get that training. We can look at if there's any other training out there as far as schools and children. We can work with Helix on that. They're one of our local schools. We can work with Grossmont, any of those, to see if maybe they have something too.
Yeah, and I think San Diego State would, you know, there's experts there in child development too, that they're close by.
We're
And
happy to look at that.
Board Member Tiffany, do you have any comments on that?
I mean, I think there's, like Chief Sweeney was saying, there's stuff that can go on the police department side, but there's also stuff that needs to happen on the school side. And I don't think that the school necessarily, campus necessarily responded appropriately either. But that doesn't have anything to do with this situation. It's good that the focus is on de-escalation. I was gonna ask the trainings, the post trainings are on the website, right? So we can look at like what the training is for school resource officers and everything like that.
Is the school resource officer training on there?
Our policies on there.
Oh, the policy, but not the
Police department, yeah.
So
But not the
when they go
training.
to a different school, we don't post other schools, but I'm sure it's available.
okay,
Yeah, I can point you in the right direction.
that would be awesome.
We good on this one?
Bob Duff has a question.
My educational background is I've been an educator for 50 years now. I find that what happens in the beginning of the day carries out through the day. The amygdala in the brain sets forth a pattern for the day. And if this particular person had a confrontation before attending school, before coming aboard, that could carry on the attitude of that person all day. And the very fact of the officer saying, "I'm going to take you to your home," may be in the last place she wanted to go.
Yeah, we don't know. And the other question I have is, has the city agreed to, I wasn't pleased with the third-party investigator in this process. And I don't know where the city stands in terms of ever hiring that third party again. I noticed they weren't mentioned for whatever reason, but I was disappointed way back when the report didn't come out. And I'm still disappointed when I read this. I continue to be disappointed that you didn't have access to information about that report as you did your audit. So is there anything, the other, I guess, recommendation would be, is the city not wanting to look at this investigator and hire them as a third party ever in the future?
So from the city's perspective, we have a process that we need to use to evaluate different consultants and vendors and companies that want to do business with the city. And as part of that process, we do evaluate their past performance and also check references. And so all of those things, if needed, we hope not to need any independent investigators in the future, but would certainly factor into our future consideration.
Good to know. And can those things be added to the recommendations, or is that really not appropriate?
No, you can certainly make a recommendation within your own board meeting on it, but to add it to the audit at this point, it's not not part and parcel of what an independent audit does.
Okay. And Stacy, there are no public comments, right?
No, not
Okay.
Question,
Someone, board member Darby, I'm sorry.
Okay.
is not Bartlett James our go-to investigator on all future police questions?
In this case, it would be. I believe the specific question was if we needed to hire an outside independent investigator. But in any, current audits or future audits that need to be done or investigations, we would turn to Bartlett James as our IPA.
Thank you.
Thank you, Larry. So we're ready to move on? Okay. So Rick, you're ready to move to the next, give us a date and maybe we can find the page.
Okay, we're gonna go to the smoking, not smoking case.
Do you have a date on that?
Yeah, I'm looking.
Okay,
Or page number.
then we'll find the page.
It's 2020, but I don't have the exact date.
Okay,
It's the other outside investigator one.
That is correct.
Would that be page 47?
let's see.
I'm working off my hard copies of the actual audit, so if I try to switch to another computer screen, I'll be lost. So I do it the simple old way.
All right.
This is the case that surrounds.
Okay, so it's on page 34 for all of us on the board, page 34. May 27th, 2020, yes.
Okay, so this case,
Sorry, Rick, do you mind if I jump in and just clarify one point, just made a minute ago at the end of that last one? The question was about whether Bartlett James would be an investigator on cases, and as the IPA, meaning the auditor will be auditing investigations, so they would not serve as investigators. I want to make sure that we're clear that there's two different roles. Investigations would continue to be handled as they are typically through internal affairs, depending on the nature of the event, and then the auditor would audit the investigation. I just want to make that clear.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Dale.
Yes, thank you.
so we've all read this. This is the Grossmont trolley station incident involving an officer who was there doing a fare check operation, of which there had been others, and he had been involved in them previously. The issue boiled down to the fact that the officer initially stated and told his coworkers and others that he observed the young man smoking. The wheels came off pretty early in this because he was 75 yards away. There were other witnesses that were present. There were even additional outside videos that captured portions of this. And at no point is there any evidence that he was smoking, had been smoking, or was preparing to smoke. Because once he was placed in handcuffs and searched, no smoking material or associated equipment was discovered in that Terry frisk that occurred. So that pat down and the seizing of what he had as he was being transported, there's no indication that there was smoking materials or lighters. This boiled down to what appears to be a case of an officer that was policing based on appearance rather than action. As it unravels and he continues to speak about the initial stop being for smoking, he then transitioned to a belief that the young man had not properly bought his fare. So the last big portion, at least in my mind, as the IPA, is the fact that he failed to initiate his body worn camera. I think it was for 53 seconds, which is not approved by policy and is oftentimes indicative of not wanting to capture what was going to transpire. But in any case, he makes contact with the young man, and like two bulls in any big corral, one bull started snorting and the other one snorted back, and it went downhill from there. There was some minor force, but it was not a violation of anything. Had the stop had probable cause to initiate it. So what I'm saying is, yeah, he grabbed him by the upper shirt collar and pushed him into a seated position on a bench. That was it. That was it. Additionally, the officer got into a good old insult contest with the young man. And again, I harken back to what I said in the first case of, if you don't like blood, you probably shouldn't be a doctor. And if you don't like getting called names, you probably shouldn't be a police officer. And that's kind of what happened here. So in the end, as the report states, the previous police chief terminated him. The officer appealed, which is his right. His termination was sustained. And then, as the report says, the DA's office charged him with lying on an official document, and he was found not guilty at trial. Now, it's important to remember that in a criminal trial, you've got to prove everything beyond a reasonable doubt. No one can tell you where that is, but I think it's generally accepted, and I'll let our two attorneys that are present, it's pretty accepted to be 94, 95, 96. Whereas in a IA investigation, or administrative investigation, or a civil investigation, you're using the standard of preponderance of the evidence, which is just more than 50% one way or the other. So it's not a conflict, at least to my eye, that using the lower standard, the previous chief terminated him, whereas the criminal jury found him not guilty. This too should not repeat itself. I know the PD has done additional training on fair enforcement, and I think the last couple of years have changed the approach to policing. And this one, I feel very confident to say, I don't think you're gonna get a repeat of this type of case.
Any questions for Rick or additional comments about this particular case?
Michaela has a question.
Michaela?
Yeah, I just had a quick question in regards to the body cams that the police officers wear. Are those active and on 24/7, or is it just on their shift, or how does that work with the body cams and the footage that gets captured?
The Axion body camera is the same one that the previous two cities I worked in. So the camera is on all the time, but until you hit the button, it doesn't start to record with audio. So when you play a body camera footage, and Chief jump in if it's updated, you'll get 30 seconds prior to the button being pushed. You just won't have audio with it. When the audio starts, that's telling you when he or she activates their body camera. In this case, all of this officer's peers had their cameras on during this entire operation. It was but him who didn't have his on until, and again, we're guesstimating 53 seconds into the incident, into the contact. So that's a pretty long delay. Now, there are cases, a lot of cases, where officers arrive and they're out of the car and they're involved in something right now, and they just don't get a chance to activate the body camera. This case wasn't one of those. Those cases generally involve activities known as full-on fights. You know, you roll up on a fight in progress and you got to get out the hell. You don't get a chance. So there are exceptions to the failure to activate your body camera. But as a rule, if you're walking 75 yards to confront a guy for smoking, that gives you a lot of time to activate your body camera.
I have a question about the use of force expert, and you had indicated in your report that the use of force expert felt that the actions were appropriate. And you're making the comment that you really need to take probable cause into consideration when determining whether use of force to that level is appropriate. Is that something that has changed, where our officers better trained in the whole aspect of identifying, does this use of force, is that appropriate for the actions that were, that the person?
Right. We chose to quote the use of force expert from the department. I was a use of force and the senior use of force when I was employed by my former agency. So the use of force was looked at both by the local use of force expert and by us. The use of force for the encounter, for the young man standing up and pushing away the officer's arms, that was an appropriate use of force had the stop been proper. But since the stop wasn't proper, now you start kind of going over the waterfall on all of the other actions. And as a result of that, the use of force was de minimis, and it was not and would not be considered an improper use of force. But the stop itself was predicated on evidence that couldn't be established. So his probable cause for the entire stop was faulty. So it all kind of goes downhill from there. But because there was force used, we needed to opine on the use of force so that the public and you guys would all understand that, yeah, there was tugging on the collar, pushing him down into a seated position. That part was appropriate. It's all of the other parts that were predicated on something that we can't prove actually occurred. Does that make sense?
So basically, if, like in this case, there was no indication that he was smoking, he didn't have smoking paraphernalia. So the use of force would, I think, not be considered appropriate because there was no underlying reason to engage to begin with.
Can I jump in real quick? Because I think it's
Yeah,
important.
help save me, because I think we're cutting hairs here.
We are. The officer in this case was not fired for the use of force. The officer in this case was fired for falsifying police report. The actions that led up to that obviously are detailed out in here. They're detailed out in our SB 1421 release that's on our website. All the video that's out there, everything is out there. But I'll just throw this out there. I mean, if an officer thinks that somebody is smoking from a distance, they believe that they're allowed to go investigate. They're allowed to do that. That is something that they believe is reasonable suspicion. I believe that they are smoking. Now I'm going to go over there and talk to them and prove it. This is one of those things where, at least in the officer's mind, at least things that have come out in different investigations, he believed that this person also needed to have a trolley pass to be in that area. Turned out not to be true. So that belief in that case, whether reasonable, could have been reasonable that he believed that, turned out in the end, when you write a report, to be different than everything, all the circumstances combined, if that makes sense. So, if an officer sees somebody doing something, we have a right to go investigate. That doesn't change here. And it's the report that brought everything out to really start to backtrack throughout this entire contact.
And this lesson, I think, comes up again in the last case tonight.
I'm sorry?
I think your example comes out in the last audit that we'll present tonight. A similar circumstance of investigating individuals that were standing around looking suspicious, if you will. So I think the chief said it exactly right. The bottom line is there was no probable cause, reasonable suspicion to interact with this individual that could be proved. Now, the fact that he believed this young guy was smoking or whatever, and he also believed or asserts that he believed that he didn't have a fare. Both, the second isn't a player because he wasn't required to have one. And all the witness statements and accompanying evidence show that he wasn't smoking either.
And that's the thing, we want our officers to make reasonable decisions. Based on facts that are before them right here, right now. They have to do that every day. We also expect them to turn their body worn cameras on when they do that. That's clearly written in our policy. There's no doubt in anybody's mind that if you're going to have a law enforcement contact, I'm going to go talk to you for something law enforcement related. My body worn camera is coming on.
Chief, would it be likely that there would be disciplinary action for not activating the camera, or is I forgot unacceptable?
It depends. I guess that's the attorney answer. And that it could be dependent on, is this something that's happened previous times before? Do we really, or like the Rick's example, when you have to jump out of the car and, you think about it until it was too late. It depends. But all of our officers acknowledge our body worn camera policy. They know when they have to turn it on, and we expect them to do that most of the time. There's always going to be those ones and twos where, especially when something is new, that muscle memory, getting that muscle memory, this wasn't new. So this is 2 years into our body worn camera project.
Thank you.
Michaela?
Yeah, just real quickly. So I might be missing something here. I actually don't have a copy of the agenda, but I'm just trying to get an idea of kind of maybe what might have been going through that officer's mind. I know that you can't really speak to the officer and how he felt in that moment outside of what's in that report. But is there any type of clarification I could get as far as why smoking would be something that would be considered suspicious? Are you not allowed to smoke in a trolley station?
Yeah, it says it in the report, you're prohibited from smoking in the trolley facility area.
Okay, got it. Thank you.
Yep.
And then I think years ago, Christian and I had a discussion about psychological testing, because, you know, and I know you don't want anybody to come into the police force that's all about power and that sort of thing. And there are psychological tests that screen people out, right?
Yes.
So in this case, it was missed, I guess, or maybe they.
I don't know that it was missed. I mean, you think about stepping outside of the police realm for a minute and the weird things that people do, that teachers, doctors, I mean, anybody that you may not catch initially that build over time. And that could be, it could be a number of factors, you know, and that's why we really focus heavily on our wellness program here, especially after the last 2 years, focusing heavily to make sure officers are in a good spot when they put on this uniform and they go out to interact with our public.
Any other comments, questions, clarifications? Are we ready to move on, Rick, to the next one?
Yeah, the next one we're gonna do is the officer involved shooting when he was on the task force. I'm opening it up now. It occurred on October 21st, 2014. Now, this is a very old case.
He was 27, maybe.
What page?
Yeah, 20, it starts at 27.
Okay, here it is. 27, yeah.
The facts of this case
What
indicate
page?
27.
the facts of this case indicate that this officer assigned to a multi-agency gang task force became aware of an individual who was a suspect in a homicide in San Diego. They located this individual at a residence. They watched him get into his car, at which time they approached to make the arrest. Our officer was one of many officers that was there that day. The information that the officer knew at the time, which is the only thing that's germane to any internal investigation or audit, it's not what we learn after the fact. But what the officer knew is he had had previous contact with this guy's gang in the East County. So he was able to identify the individual as the wanted person. As the individual entered the car, got into the driver's seat, numerous officers from numerous agencies approached. They verbally identified themselves. All of them verbally identified themselves, and they were close, 5 to 7 feet. Our officer recalled that the driver, now we'll call him the driver, reached under the seat to grab an object and at the same time attempted to start the car. The car is also a deadly weapon. But based on this individual's history, all the officers believed him to be armed and dangerous. And being the prime suspect in a homicide is, you know, it definitely ramps up your wariness. So the La Mesa officer believed that the subject was reaching for a weapon and that he was going to shoot it out with the officers, which is not an unreasonable assumption based on his gang affiliation. So The La Mesa officer fired his weapon in an initial barrage, discharging several rounds, and he was joined by other officers who likely perceived the same threat. Go ahead. Was there a
No,
question?
sorry, no, sorry.
Okay. The driver then put the vehicle into gear, began moving away from the officers, causing one officer to fall to the ground. The La Mesa officer believed that the subject had now escaped control of the officers, was a threat to the public and to other officers, believed that he was going to fight law enforcement. He also further believed that he had obtained a weapon, and he fired 3 more times at the Mustang as it began to move away. The vehicle traveled a short distance, collided with another vehicle. The subject driver was struck 2 times out of the numerous gunshots, once in the arm, I think once in the abdomen. He recovered from his wounds. Recovered outside, the La Mesa officer recalls seeing him drop a black object from his hand outside the driver's window as he was shouting, "I give up, I'm done," indicating that he did in fact have a black object in his hand. When the crime scene was swept, that black object was a loaded handgun. So the deadly force policy of the La Mesa Police Department which is what we're auditing, allows officers to fire in defense of self or others if they have a reasonable belief that their life of others is at risk of death or serious bodily injury. And that's what the La Mesa officer was able to verbalize, and it was backed up by the evidence. And so this, as horrific as it may be, was a shooting that was within policy. Questions?
I have a question that might be for the chief. I was under the assumption that bullets were issued to the officer that could identify, like if somebody was shot, that they would identify exactly whose gun that, no.
No, I mean ballistics would probably get that. That's a test that's done in a lab. But bullets are issued whether we're shooting 40 and we're shooting 40 calibers in.
Yes.
Most agencies in the county were shooting 40 calibers. So there's no particular identifying marks on the bullet itself. There are particular identifying marks on the bullet after it's been discharged, and it's looking about in the slide. So when you do the ballistics on it, you can usually, depending on how destroyed or not destroyed the bullet is after, you can typically determine what gun that came from.
And if they're different agencies as well, and different use of types of gun.
In this case, all the rounds were 40 caliber, but the chief's exactly right. There's 2 ways to identify. One is on the bullets itself, which goes down the barrel, has lands and grooves that leave a specific striation on the round that is discharged. You can match those up forensically. You also can take the ejected cartridge that's lying on the ground and do tool mark where the firing pin strikes the primer and where the extractor removes the round from the gun. So you can identify specifically where it was. In this case, there was no reason to do so because the totality of the situation would indicate that this shooting was within policy for all the officers. So if you're asking me, did either of the 2 bullets that struck the subject, were they from the La Mesa officer? They didn't do that forensic test on them.
And then since this occurrence, AB 392, which kind of ramped up the reasonable use of deadly force, it becomes objectively reasonable. and I think in this case, it would still be considered objectively reasonable, which is kind of where Rick took us through in his review of it.
I agree. I agree with Rick.
I have a question about firing at a moving vehicle. I know that's something that's not technically not done. However, I'm sure there are exceptions. In a case like this would be considered an exception
Yeah, our policy says it's generally prohibited.
generally. Okay.
And there's been legislation that's come out that it's, if somebody's coming at you in a vehicle, you can get out of the way, you should do that.
Oh,
Because shooting at that vehicle is not always the best idea, because then you have another projected missile moving down the road.
yeah.
In this case, this is just kind of a continuation of an officer involved shooting that had already occurred, and the subject was armed. This is the first I've read this, so it's just a continuation to stop that threat, because what the last thing we want is somebody to go, in their car and kill somebody else. This has all happened like that. I mean, it's not, it seems longer when you read it, but the reality is most of these situations are a matter of seconds and it's over.
The chief is exactly right. The other thing that police officers are worried about is a armed subject moving to a position of cover and concealment where he can inflict additional damage, not just to the responding officers, but to the citizenry. So there are situations where an individual has opened fire on somebody and then is running as if getting away, where the officer reasonably believes he's running to get behind that dumpster so that he can continue the gunfight. And that's another example of objectively reasonable, because, the chief hit this on the head. These occur right now. I mean, 1 second you're popping bubble gum, and the next second you're trying to get your weapon out. So, but this one is a very, very straightforward officer involved shooting.
Any questions, comments, any public comments? All right, I think we're ready to move on to the next one, Rick.
Okay. This one is July 6, 2019.
Okay, that's on page 18.
This one just has so much hard evidence to review. This is an investigator's dream, as opposed to the first case we talked about tonight, where we didn't have much. This is a domestic violence type of situation wherein the male locked himself in the house with the children inside. The oldest daughter called her mom, who wasn't present, to come home. She came home, broken things inside, tried to get him to leave, and it went downhill, and they called the police to come. The evidence is overwhelmingly proof positive of the officers expending a lot of time and effort to get this guy just to open the door and go. It took nearly 15 minutes of knocking on the door and begging for the door to be opened. With the kids inside, there are all sorts of potential problems. The male individual in this is what's known as a fourth waiver, which means he's on probation or parole. Part of probation and parole, you sign a paper waiving the need for a search warrant for any place that you're at or residing. So if you're driving down the road and you're on a fourth waiver and you get pulled over, the officer doesn't have to ask permission to search your car. He can search your car or your apartment or whatever, because that's what you agreed to be letting out of prison prior to the end of your sentence. And that's what the case was here. So once he didn't open the door, they finally got the key, unlocked the locks, pushing in the door, and just like you see on TV all the time. He's pushing on the other side, back and forth, and finally the officers get inside. And true to form, it becomes a physical fight. The individual later in this incident apologizes to the officers for his conduct, but the fight only ends once the third officer draws and deploys his taser, which ends the fight. They were able to secure him, take him to jail, and that's at what time he says, hey, I'm sorry, I can't remember his exact words, but you know, dude, my bad is what they'd say on my football team. There's a lot of transcripts in here about what's exactly going on. Then the same officers involved in another incident. This is where I was saying he noticed two males under the freeway acting suspiciously or out of place, or he had reasonable suspicion to go up and do a field card with them. And as it turns out, one of the individuals had an interaction with the officer who, based on the transcripts I read, he initially didn't recall this guy. So a lot of back and forth and whatever. He gets him fully ID'd. The guy has a switchblade in his pocket, which is a prohibited weapon. He takes the guy admits it. It wasn't like he was, you know, trying to deploy and stab the officer, but he admits that he has a folding knife, switchblade, what have you. That's a violation. So what the officer did was take him to jail, I think he took him to the PD, photographed, booked him, and released him. So they did an investigative detention. Evidently, the time before, they got in a scuffle because the citizen recalls it, but the officer doesn't. So that just goes to show you how often our officers are in scuffles, which where the person who's on the other end of the scuffle, he remembers it perfectly, but you know, that's a one-off for him or a two-off where the officer has to deal with this kind of stuff all the time. So as you'll read in the report, the use of force in the home was perfectly lawful and was not inappropriate in any way, shape, or form, including the two officers who were grappling with the guy on the ground, and then finally the taser deployment. So that worked well. The taser is a great tool because it stops fights. It stops punching or hitting with batons, or you know, God forbid, use of a gun. So the taser was deployed properly and it worked as advertised. We also look at these to ensure that our officers are rendering immediate medical aid. Hang on a second. COVID dog, stop it. These dogs, ever since COVID, I think they run the house. But so that part was good. And as for the second incident, again, we didn't find any violation.
All right. Questions about this particular audit case?
I have a slightly unrelated question about tasers. And if Rick has any input as well, Rick or the chief. So I've seen studies that said that tasers are can be 60 to 70% effective because you have to be a distance so that when the two parts come out, that they're enough far away that actually gives the shock to incapacitate the person. And if you're too close, then they get really close up and it doesn't give enough of a shock. So what is?
Yeah, I think I can talk to that, and then the chief can add his 2 cents. I will tell you that tasers are much more effective in San Diego County than they are in Salt Lake County. because we, starting about 3 weeks ago, all are wearing heavy coats and whatever. And a big poofy coat can oftentimes defeat at least one of the two barbs. In San Diego, where you're all wearing muscle shirts and t-shirts, they're pretty effective. The other part about a taser is there are two modes to deploy a taser. There is the firing of the darts that are run on two little wires each dart. And the current goes from across from the two darts in the body. But you can remove that and do what's known as a drive stun, which you remove the cartridge, you press the taser up against the body, and you initiate the trigger. And there's two little nubs, and it works real well too. So in San Diego County, man, I'd never use OC spray because the taser works so well, but it can malfunction. You can miss with the dart if the distance is too great, and it can be defeated by heavy clothing. Because you certainly don't want to shoot it at the face. The center of mass tool. But if you get a good hit from 10, 15 feet, they're generally both in the pecs. And when it initiates, you're going down.
You're right on. The spread has a lot to do with it. And intoxication levels, whether it's, some type of narcotic. I've seen it where people have been tased and like, what's going on here? It's not working at all. So, it's probably about 70% it works on, the other 30 plus doesn't.
When the 30% it doesn't work, do people get more mad, or are they just kind of like, they don't realize what happened and they just keep doing the same thing they were doing before?
It depends. I mean, the one case that I can think of, the person was just like, nothing, no pain whatsoever, zero pain. And I've only seen that once in my career. But people don't typically get mad. They're like, what are you doing? It's more of a confusion. And then we try and transition to something else that would work.
I had one in my time. It was a guy ended up being on PCP, and it was a task force, very, very bad, violent guy, a fugitive out of California, as it ends up. But when the taser barbs hit him, and they were perfect, just hit him right here. He didn't register at all. You thought maybe the hair would stand up or something. Nothing. But you asked if they get upset. If you're tasing them, they've already gone past the initial I'm upset threshold. So generally tasing them does nothing to help their demeanor if it doesn't work. That's my experience.
I appreciate the information.
Did I say that tactfully?
Very.
All right, anything else on this particular audit report? If not, we'll go on to the last one on page 47.
Carlo, I didn't get a fifth one.
Oh, it's on October 28th, 2019. It's the one where somebody is out in the street jaywalking and videotaping an officer. Did you recall that one? It's like a live stream cop watch thing that some guy was doing out in the middle of the street.
He had it on YouTube.
If you don't have it, we could do it.
February 18th.
Yeah.
Which was when the
Yeah, I don't have that report. Hang on a second. Let me see if I can find it elsewhere.
Oh, that's what it was reviewed.
yeah.
He was using some kind of.
Live stream.
That was live on YouTube.
In Canada.
Yeah, from Canada.
Told you I was computer challenged. I didn't lie to you. Is it in the agenda? Is a copy of the report in the agenda?
Yes,
Yeah.
it's on page 47 of the agenda.
Okay, I only got a copy of the abbreviated agenda. I don't have it right here. Let me
Okay,
check one other place to see if I have it elsewhere.
would the date help? It occurred on October 28th, 2019.
Oh, it would help a normal person.
Well, if you can't find it, we can discuss it next meeting, I think.
I don't have it, and it's gonna take me forever. I have them listed differently. So, I know this. I've looked at them all. I don't have them memorized because there were too many, but we have covered the two cases where there was some controversy. So I can't speak specifically about it. If Carla will be so nice to add it to the agenda next time, I'll speak to it next time, but I only got 4 sent to me this time, and I failed to anticipate a 5th.
You did a great job. It was really, your audits are excellent. So thank you for all your work on these.
You're welcome.
We appreciate it. Stacy, we don't have any public comment at this point. So we can move on to the next item on the agenda.
Excuse me, Janet, I just want to pop in here with a note about procedures. I know there had been a question earlier about whether Rick could incorporate some of the CPOB's recommendations in the audit report. And so the procedures do provide some guidelines on how the CPOB can comment on the IPA's recommendations. So if you look at, let me see what it is, Article 8 in Section 3 and 4, those sections govern the delivery of recommendations and the recording of recommendations. So what you might want to do is move, and you could do this after receiving any report from the auditor, move to ratify the IPA's recommendations that are contained in the reports. And you could move to ratify the IPA's recommendations with additional comments by the CPOB. So I think the one that I heard was perhaps a recommendation about additional training for officers regarding child development, that you could move to ratify those comments, and then the IPA in his next quarterly report to the board and the PD will summarize all of those recommendations, and then the chief is instructed to respond in writing to the recommendation. So that's Article 8, Sections 3 and 4.
Thank you. That really helps. So right now you're saying that we need to approve the recommendations as provided in the audit reports, and in addition, add to it our recommendation about additional training in child development, cognitive development.
Exactly. Yeah, I think the agenda had a recommended motion to just receive the reports, but I think the technical way to comply is to ratify the recommendation with or without your comments.
All right, so we need to make a motion then and vote on this. Is that right? Correct.
Correct.
Okay, so would anybody like to make a motion to?
I move that we ratify the IPA's report.
With the recommendations and the additional recommendation?
Negative.
Is there a second?
I'll second it.
No,
Don't second it? What did he mean by negative?
he said he's not adding that. He doesn't want to add that.
Board Member Darby, just to be clear, your motion is to ratify the 4 reports that we heard today with the IPA's recommendations that were in those reports. but not to add any other additional recommendations on top of those. Is that accurate?
Correct.
Okay, is there a second?
Second.
Okay,
Welcome second.
Welcome, second.
Discussion.
That means we can't add
Welcome,
any more
second.
recommendations.
right.
Look, in terms of discussion, what would we do with recommendations that we have made?
Well, we have to vote
second
on their
motion?
motion.
Well, I know we have to pass this one, sure.
You know, we might not. So
We
then
might.
we make another motion if it doesn't.
I
You can make a
understand.
substitute motion on the floor. And then you would vote on the substitute motion. If that fails, then you'd go to this original motion.
Can I ask a question
Sure.
first? So if we recommended that there's additional training on child development, is that something available through post, or is that something that would have to be like created?
It depends. I hate to keep using that. I just don't know what's out there. And like I said, even if you made a recommendation that we look into it, or I'm happy to do that. I just don't know what's out there and exists currently that would enhance what is already being done by us.
So we,
And just to clarify the effect of the recommendation, nothing, the chief of police is ultimately, the one in charge of the LMPD. So the purpose of the recommendation process is really to just formalize the dialogue between the CPOB and the police department. So if the board did make that recommendation, it would just, the only thing it would be obligating the chief to do would be to provide a response in writing to you about whether such training exists, its feasibility, all of that.
and I think it's basically just asking for you to consider it and see if, and I could help maybe try to find. I mean, maybe we could talk about specialists in child development that,
Happy to do that.
I mean, we can talk about. So a friendly amendment is what,
You could do a friendly amendment if Darby is okay with that, or you can do a substitute motion, which is a completely separate motion, which would be voted on first. If that fails, then you would go to the motion that was made by Darby and seconded by Walker.
I'll do a substitute motion to ratify the IPA's report with the IPA recommendations and an additional CPOB recommendation just for the chief to look into trainings for child development.
is there a second?
I'll
Second.
second that.
No.
Board Member Walkup, how do you vote?
Yes.
Board Member Tiffany, how do you vote?
Yes.
Board Member McWilliams, how do you vote?
Yes.
Board Member Johnson, how do you vote?
Yes.
Board Member Duff, how do you vote?
Yes.
Board Member Dement, how do you vote?
Yes.
Board Member Darby, how do you vote?
No.
Board Member Blackman, how do you vote?
Yes.
Vice Chair Dillard, how do you vote?
Yes.
Chair Costanos, how do you vote?
Yes,
Motion carries with Board Member Duff voting no and everyone.
Board Member Darby.
I'm sorry, Board Member Darby, I'm sorry. Voting no and everyone else voted yes.
thank you. The next item on the agenda, 5.5, I'll just briefly, I know there's something in this room at 6, right? So just briefly, I want to give you an update. I've been in discussion with both Dr. Channon at San Diego State, who works with police data, and Dr. Aiken, who also has helped us develop our survey into a report. And they both recommended that we place our current survey on some kind of Survey Monkey type device that, can reach a greater population of people. They said we really ideally should collect between 375 and 400 responses. And Dr. Aiken has a PhD student who is interested in working with us on putting that forward. So yeah, I'm kind of excited about that. So I just wanted to give you the update on that. We've collected so far this year about 25 paper surveys because there were fewer people this year attending the chief's listening sessions, probably because everybody's feeling comfortable with what the chief is doing, so they don't feel the need to physically be there, but it's a good sign, except that we're not getting a response from the survey. So I think if we take it online, as well as to the youth again, like we did last year, we could get a good sizable response. And that was the update there. There's a work plan that you received a copy of. Thank you. I think Lynn put this together. Is that right? Lynn, I don't know if you want to go through the process.
Yeah, I think I'm gonna go through the work plan fairly quickly. I'm not gonna hit on all the goals and tracking milestones in the work plan. Really, the idea with this item is to get it refreshed in board members' minds. This was quite a while ago that we developed this. And also, I think we have some new board members that maybe weren't around when this was developed, and get them a little bit more familiar with it. So I'm gonna, and this for the sake of time, I'm gonna go through this relatively quickly. Our hope is that this item can inform the development of the 2023 work plan that will be at a future agenda, scheduled at a future agenda. So some of these items may be continued depending on progress made in the different categories. So with that, we'll start with work plan item number 1. Continue to conduct data collection to gather information for the purpose of measuring change over time. One area where there's been progress made is really the RIPA Act. PD continues to meet the state mandate requirement for the RIPA Act. And also what Chair Castaños just spoke to was the CPOB survey that hopes to and has informed the CPOB with its data collection. Work plan item number 2, receive ongoing training and continuing educational training for all new and current CPOB members. There's been a lot of progress made in work plan item number 2. A number of you have gone on ride-alongs, taken the NACOL webinar training and other various trainings, ride-alongs also. So there's been progress made in work plan item number 2. Work plan item number 3, promote internship application and program for the La Mesa residents currently enrolled in high school or college to serve as temporary non-voting CPOB members. I believe we've had a couple of attempts at recruiting that haven't been very successful. This may be an item that the board considers to either continue in the 2023 work plan, or you refocus your efforts elsewhere. Work plan item number 4, I don't want to speak too much to this because I don't want to steal Leroy's thunder. This is the developing a program for the accessibility and mediation of the complaint process. So I'm gonna actually defer on that one because I think we're gonna hear from Leroy soon as part of the ad hoc subcommittee that's been working with the police officers union. Work plan item number 5, develop and recommend community outreach programs regarding policing in La Mesa. This might be an item that you consider to continue in the 2023 work plan. And possibly a suggestion to reconvene a subcommittee or the subcommittees regarding some of the items, the goals and tracking milestones under this work plan item. Work plan item number 6, develop and recommend alternative social service and crime prevention policies and strategies. Again, another item that you may consider either consolidating, condensing, continuing, or redirecting your efforts, depending on how you feel progress has been made in work plan item number 6. Work plan item number 7, provide semi-annual and annual reports to La Mesa City Council and City Manager. Good progress here. You're actually reporting to council more frequently than semi-annual and annual. You are producing quarterly reports via your IPA to council regularly. So good progress and meeting work plan item number 7. Work plan item number 8, work with the La Mesa Police Department to implement Hillard Heights after action report recommendations. A lot of progress made by La Mesa PD in this area. If the CPOB feels the need to reconvene a subcommittee on this, continue this item, depending on how you feel that those recommendations have been met, that's a possibility. Work plan item number 9, continue to evaluate La Mesa PD policies and provide ongoing recommendations. That is really an ongoing item. He has been providing updates regarding policy changes as needed to this board at recent and past meetings. Work plan item number 10. Continue working with the chief of police to engage in La Mesa PD hiring process when possible and offer recommendations regarding the hiring process, exams, and the interview process. The board has been highly involved in the recruiting of recent sergeants, lieutenants, and the captain position. This is really an ongoing item that a good amount of progress has been made with this board's involvement in particular the Mesa PD's hiring process. Work plan item number 11, collaborate with the IPA to review audits of Mesa PD investigations. Another ongoing item you would probably consider to continue in the 2023 work plan, as that is something that you're continuing to do with your IPA moving forward. That's about it.
Very nice job, Lynn. You did a great job of capturing everything we've been working on, and a lot of these items are in process. We're working through them, so will probably be a lot of carryover, but there are a few things we feel that we've accomplished. I think Hillard Hines is probably ready to move on.
We've accomplished a lot.
Yes.
And the plan is to present the work plan for all boards and commissions to the city council in February of next year. So we're going to give you a couple of more opportunities. We'll place this item, we'll update it, the status updates, and then we'll place a draft 2023 work plan for you on a future agenda for your consideration. You can give us additional comments, and then once it's ready, then we'll present it to the city council.
Any questions, comments on this? So item number, and we don't have to vote or anything.
No, this is an information.
Okay. Item number 6, committee reports, and Leroy was going to give us an update on the mediation program. Committee.
So we met on October 10th and met with the 2 POA reps, and Danny and Larry were there, and we discussed SB2 as one thing, and we're still looking to get some more information about that. But just in terms of what our committee will be looking at doing is trying to model our mediation program after the one that Pasadena has, which is the NACO approved one. So we all agree on that. I think that's a great direction to go. I'll mention some other great names. Lynn and Carlo are going to help with putting together an editable version of the Pasadena document that goes to the POA, gets seen, goes through specific channels, then share the document with the POA membership. Then it will be shared with Bruce Ambrose of our IPA. So that's our direction. I think our group all agrees that that's a good direction to go on. It's a good model for us to use. The POA is very much on board with using that particular model, and it looks like it's a good one, a NACO approved model that we can move the mediation program forward. But Danny, if you have anything you'd like to add, or Larry, if you have anything, or Caitlin, if you have anything. Anybody else have anything?
No, you covered it pretty good, Leroy. Thank
Okay.
Thank you, Leroy.
Yes.
Staff and board member announcements. Larry, you were going to give us a couple of tips you picked up from NACO. You attended the actual conference. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct. Just a couple of things. One is COPA, C-O-P-A, and we're not talking about the Copacabana. This is out of the city of Chicago, and it is the Civilian Office of Police Accountability. And they have developed an academy for oversight personnel, and it is now required that the 2-week academy be attended by all people involved in oversight. And it's pretty thorough. And one thing is, I've been thinking about it, the chief and the LMPD has done a good job in in aiding our training. And kind of in the back of my head is maybe a goal for a San Diego County-wide academy, like the COPA Academy in Chicago. The other thing, I've had the privilege of eating with royalty and prime ministers and stuff, but one night at the NACO convention, I got to eat with Opal Lee. Does anybody know who Opal Lee is?
Oh, yeah,
She's the grandmother of Juneteenth. She was in the Oval Office. She was in the Oval Office when President Biden signed Juneteenth legislature, making it a national holiday. And she was a delight. She's 96 years old. She asked me how old I was. I said, well, 75. She said, oh, I need a younger man. You're too old for me. And then she laughed this infectious laugh. She was just a delight. And it was a privilege to be able to eat with her and to fellowship with her and hear her story. What a marvelous woman, and to be a part of current history in a sense was just a thrill for me. And you know, the Lord bless Opal Lee. She did a great job. She's a wonderful person.
in fact, we honored her at our Juneteenth celebration here in La Mesa. We wanted to try to get her to
Come in person.
and we
But
couldn't
that was
quite
a little,
get
that was a little
little
ambitious.
challenge.
Well, tell her you got a young man for her.
Yeah, right, that'll bring her in. So, great, thank you, Larry, that was very helpful, especially, I love the idea of COPA, Civilian Office of Police Accountability. So,
I have, yeah,
Megan.
I just wanted to, I've emailed the few of you that have upcoming expiring terms. In the email, I did state to have it in, I believe, beginning of December, but likely the interviews are going to take place in January, since we're limited on the number of meetings we have left this year, city council meetings. So just as a reminder, who do have expiring terms, even though they may expire on December 31st, it's either December 31st or when your successor is appointed. So if you aren't reapplying, you may not necessarily be done on December 31st. So just keep that in mind. And for those who have expiring terms, it's going to be the La Mesa Spring Valley representative, which is Robert Duff, the Helix Charter High School representative, which is Janet Castanos, the business community representative, which is Michael McWilliams, the faith community representative, which is Reverend Christian Dement, the young adult representative, which is Anna Fuentes, and the older adult representative, which is Larry Darby. So all of you have expiring terms. And on top of that, as the new date to get your application in, I'm asking no later than Tuesday, January 3rd. And the interviews are tentatively scheduled for the first meeting in January, which is January 10th. But that is tentatively, it could possibly change. And then I wanted to mention for those who were running for office, such as our Vice Chair Dillard and Caitlin Tiffany, if the results continue as they are, both of you are going to have to resign from this board, unfortunately. But at the same time, fortunately for you, since you'll be going on to bigger things potentially. So just keep that in mind if the results keep going the way they are, which I believe there's only about 15,000 ballots left. So it's looking good for both of you. So we'll have those 2 seats opening as well, which unfortunately isn't part of the ones that are expiring terms. So it's 2 additional on top of the 6 that we have. So if you know anyone that would be interested in applying, please have them apply. And to Tiffany and Patricia, best of luck in these next few days when until the final results come in. And congratulations to both of you at where you are right now.
And I'll add just very quickly that we're going to follow up via email about potentially holding our next meeting on December 14th.
Okay.
So I will follow up with you tomorrow morning.
That'd be great. Okay, let's hope that works, so we don't cut into Christmas family or holiday time. All right, any other comments, questions? And we'll get back to you about the date of our next meeting. So meeting is adjourned. Thank you.
Thank you.
And I hate to quickly kick you all out.
Yeah.
That's the- Yeah. I gotta get the room ready.
You made it with 1 minute left.
I know.